This is part 4 of the Tamiya Avante 2011 build series. So I have a little bit more of the rear suspension built, and then after that you move on to the front bumper, the front stabilizer, the front suspension arms. So I made some brief mention of this in the Black Special build series, but I'll talk about it in a little bit more detail here. When you're putting on these I mean, they're not really turnbuckles, but we can call them turnbuckles. It's a very challenging process to get the exact gap spacing that you want. And the reason for that is because you have this screw here. It's just a really long screw. And then you have one nut that you put in on this side and then one on this side. And they each lock in against these ball joint pieces. Okay. Now on this particular side, between the nut and the ball joint, there's a little holder unit. It's just got a hole here and another hole here, and the bottom hole is where the rear stabilizer slots through. So you're supposed to set this holder to be at a specific angle. It's supposed to be completely vertical, okay, with respect to the ground. And then while you're doing that, you have to tighten this nut down and this nut down to get this bit here to be straight and tight. And then while you're doing that, you have to tighten down this nut and this ball end to be reasonably flat here and make this spacing 8 millimeters. So that's difficult to do. I did the best I could to make this 8 millimeters. What I'm really going to do is after the whole thing is built, or at least after the wheels are mounted and the shocks are mounted, I'm going to sort of readjust this to make sure the camber is about -1 degrees. And so that'll just require a little bit of fiddling. The other thing is, I don't know if you can see here, so with the aluminum rear hub carriers, the Yeah Racing rear hub carriers, this center, you'll notice there's a little notch here and a little notch on this side. That's because this hub carrier is actually made just with this centerpiece here, and then it comes with these black aluminum spacers that you put on either side. So when you mount the rear turnbuckle, there's a long 25 millimeter screw that you use. You have to use a kit screw for this, okay? And it's a Phillips head screw, and then it goes all the way through, and there's a little lock nut at the end. So Yeah Racing gives you these two little spacers to make this whole length here about as long as what you get in the stock plastic hub carrier. Okay, so that is the rear with the stabilizer, and again the stabilizer runs under the upper deck. Okay, now moving to the front, you start with the bumper, and there are these two holders here that hold on the front stabilizer. 4 screws go into the bumper. Later on, when you put on the extended bumper, which comes with the re-release models, but not the original edition, you'll have to take out 2 of these screws. I don't remember if they're the center ones or the edge ones. But you'll take 2 of those out, and then the wider bumper extension will use slightly longer screws. These are 8 millimeter screws. I think they'll use maybe 12 or something like that to screw in those bumper pieces. Okay. Now the bumper itself, there are 2 or 3 screws on the bottom. 1, 2, 3. Okay. This screw right here is a very long screw, and that comes up through this nut here. So you take this nut and you put it in this little hex size holder here, and this holder is part of the plastic brace that's used to hold together the 2 halves of the front gearbox. Okay, so you put that nut in there, and then use a little bit of anti-wear grease on the tip of the screw, and then you screw that through. And then these 2 posts here, let me see if I can, that's these guys here. So they're circular with a hex top, and then they drop into the front of the front gearbox, and the little plastic housing that they drop into is also hex shaped, so they should slot right in. And then the other 2 screws that mount the bumper from the bottom, those are, I think, 8 millimeter screws. You put some anti-wear grease on that, and you screw them up through this. Now these posts are also what the front rocker arm pivots on. So this rocker arm is this bit here, and then extends out to about here, and there's another one on this side. And the idea is that they can absorb some of the impact from a crash. So I showed some of this at in the Black Special video. I'll just show you here again. So if, say, the front wheel gets pushed, if you hit like a corner or something, you know, this little rubber unit here, it's like a clear rubber, it absorbs or dampens the impact, and that should save you from breaking parts, depending on how hard you hit the chassis. Okay, so that's kind of neat. And then that mounts onto, sorry for the shakiness, this front ball joint here. Okay, there's a screw that goes in to mount it onto the rocker arm, and then there's there's the holder for the stabilizer, and then a washer, and then this nut here is part of this whole assembly. This plastic and then metal piece here is one part that comes on the part tree. Okay, and then on this side you have one ball joint, and then there's a screw, and then that mounts into a plastic ball joint here. Let me see if I can show you that. That would be here. So this unit is plastic, okay, and this is metal, and so you screw them together. It's supposed to be a 1 millimeter gap. Hard to measure, but I tried to get it about 1 millimeter. And then they mount with E-clips here, so there's a shaft that comes in, E-clip on the bottom, shaft that goes in this way, it mounts this bit, E-clip on the side. This E-clip's pretty small, so it's a little hard to clip it in, so I just use some needle nose pliers like this, okay? And then that seems to work okay. Then you also have this ball stud here that mounts on this end, and there's just a long screw that goes in to screw this ball stud in. And this is later used for, I think it's for the adjusting camber. Let me check here. We can look right here. So there's this this ball stud, yes. So that's part of the, is that right? Let me make sure I got this right. It goes on something. Okay, well, I'll follow up on that later. Can't really see it right now. That, alright, and then we come over here, and we have, oh, that goes on there. Then we have this. That goes there. That's strange. I don't really see it. We go one more page over. Oops. Yeah, shocks. Okay, well, it mounts on something. I can't remember what. Let's see. There's, oh, right. So if you remember, I think it was part 1 or part 2, I talked about how on this side, there's a little piece of tape you got to put over the hole here, and that's because that hole fits a shaft that goes through which one of the gears in the front gearbox mounts on. So when you put this suspension arm on, this ball joint covers that hole. So when you mount this, that's when you can take the tape off. Okay. So this is where we are right now. I'll go through the next few steps. That's going to comprise finishing off the front suspension. So I already have this bit done here. Then we're going to do the universals, the front hub carriers. And these, of course, are I have the Yeah Racing aluminum ones for this. And you'll notice, just like the rear universals, the front universals are flat here, so there's no C-clip to hold the pin in. So you have to hold the pin in with this set screw. If you want to, you could even maybe take a Dremel and sort of grind down a little flat piece on this pin to help the set screw hold it in. Now, I didn't do that, but you could do that if you want. These little spacers here at this screw, I'll show you that once it's all put together, but that actually is used to define the total steering lock. Okay, then we just put in the rest of the front drivetrain here, mount it all up, and then do the steering, and after that we do the shocks. So I'll make a video probably after this step here, and then I'll make a video for the shocks. So that's it.